Hi, Lee Phillips here. Yeah, I'm an attorney still. Don't hold it against me even now. I want to talk about elements of a corporation. This thing called a corporation, it's actually a person under the law in many respects. In fact, the Wall Street demonstrators a few years back were saying that corporations shouldn't be a person. A corporation, by definition, has four elements. It has a limited liability shield, and that's the big one that we like in a corporation because it protects you, the owner, you, the officer and director, from what happens out in the corporate world, in the company, the liability shield. It also has transferability of ownership. Stock can be sold or transferred very easily in a corporation without restriction. Now, I can have a corporation that puts restrictions on it, and very often it's closely held, or a corporation with only 3 or 4 or 5 people will have restrictions on the ability of each person to sell a stock. The other 2 members, or shareholders in a corporation, members in an LLC, but the other 2 shareholders, they have first right to buy the stock that the third individual selling. So he has to offer it. And there's a whole section in the bylaws that talk about these first rights of refusal, is often what they call them. So it has free transferability of stock in most cases. So there's 2. It has centralized management. What that means is that the management of the company is centralized in the officers and directors, not in the owners. Officers and directors of a corporation don't have to be owners. They can be anybody. Now, the president of IBM doesn't have to own IBM stock, but trust me, he's getting a lot of stock for being president of IBM. So, technically, though, we don't have to have an owner be the officer, director of the company. Anybody can fill that because the management is centralized in the officers and directors, not in owners. The third thing is that one. The fourth thing, that's what we're up to, I remember that, is continuity of life. Now, that doesn't mean that the company goes on forever. You will often, in the bylaws or even in the articles of incorporation at times, set a duration, a term for the life of the company. This company is going to last 20 years. This corporation is going to go on perpetually. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about in continuity of life is that the life of an owner is important. If you don't have continuity of life, when one of the owners dies, the company dies. Now, obviously, when one of the owners of IBM stock dies, IBM doesn't die, right? Well, but what if there's only 2 or 3 of you that own the company? It's a closely held company. When one of the owners dies, does the company die? And by definition, in a corporation, the answer is no. It continues on. It has continuity of life past the death of one of the owners. So, 4 elements that have to be there in a corporation: limited liability, transferability, the continuity of life, and brain freeze. What was the third one? Fourth one. I just said it. I guess I'm getting old and senile. What is it? Soraya?
I didn't write it down. I forget which one you missed.
Transferability, continuity of life, limited liability, and centralized management. I knew I'd get it. So at any rate, those 4 elements have to be in your corporation. That's what defines a corporation legally. We look for those 4 elements. Lee Phillips talking about I'm trying to remember the four elements of a corporation.